This episode goes out to our patron, Sarah. We are so grateful you're here. Hi there, Garrett Robinson here. Welcome to the 23rd episode of the Nightblade Epic Podcast Season 3. Hey listener, 2 quick announcements today, and I am going to try to keep them quick. First, you can now pre-order Tales of the Wanderer Volume 1, the latest book of Underrealm, at underrealm.net/wander. This gorgeous 3-book volume contains the first 3 novels in the Tales of the Wanderer series. It's also the largest Underrealm title ever at 978 pages of epic fantasy adventure. Pre-orders are incredibly helpful to us as we get ready for the book launch. And if you pre-order a hardcover in the United States, it will even come to you signed. Pre-order your copy today at underrealm.net/wander. That's underrealm.net/wander. Next up, I've now published 4 episodes of Quest to my Patreon. Patreon is a voluntary support site where you can chip in a little bit of cash each month to help support this show and keep me writing. All my patrons get to read my new books as I write them, and there are tons of other cool benefits depending on your level of support. Right now, I'm trying to reach 100 supporters on Patreon, and we're so close with 93 patrons so far. When I hit the goal to celebrate, I'm going to commission some new Underrealm character art to share with you and everyone else out there in the community. And then you get to help me decide on our next goal. To support me for $1 a month, or more than $1 a month, go over to patreon.com/Garrett B. Robinson. That's patreon.com/Garrett B. Robinson. Okay, now it's time for today's episode. Today, you're getting chapters 31 and 32 of Darkfire. When we left off, Lauren and Albern had been forced to abandon Jem and Jordell to the mercy of the Shades. Enjoy! Darkfire, Chapter 31. Lauren kept fighting to free herself, desperate to go back, but Albern forced her on. Once they were in the hallways, he did not make for the jail where their escape lay, but pulled her in the other direction. "Where are you going?" said Lauren. "Our foes are too close on our heels. We must draw them away or risk leading them right to Annis and Zane. If we must die, let us not be their doom as well." As if to lend strength to his words, guards erupted from the hallway behind. Albern pushed her ahead of him as they fled, running until they reached the thick wooden door of the northeast watchtower. 2 guards waited within, swords drawn and eyes wide with alarm. They paused in confusion when they saw Albern in his guardsman's uniform. That gave him the moment he needed, and one guard fell, his chest laid open by a heavy strike. The other guard traded blows, but only for a moment, for Albern was strengthened by wrath. He plunged the blade deep into the guard's belly, then withdrew it before the man could hit the ground. Lauren winced as each body fell. So many dead, and whatever Jordell had told her, still she only saw men and women following orders. But she held her tongue, for she could hardly think of a worse time to chastise Albern. He had saved her life countless times by now, and did so anew with every stroke of the blade. "Thank the sky," said Albern. Lauren followed his gaze to a bow standing in the corner, a quiver of arrows just beside it. Quickly he sheathed his sword and snatched up the bow. She could almost see his body relax at the familiar feel of the weapon. They heard boots pounding down the hallway through which they had come. Up the stairs they ran, Lauren in the lead once more, until they reached the middle door that led to the battlements. Once again they emerged into the rain, but this time the night was bright with the flames of many torches set into stands along the walls. Another guard stood just beyond the doorway. Albern did not pause in his run, but merely planted his shoulder in the woman's chest. She pitched backwards, slipping across the wet stones to fall with a cry into the courtyard below. Looking down, Lauren saw that most of the caravans were now black with Darkfire. Yeren guards ran among them, trying to separate the wagons that might still be saved, but none would venture too close to the black flames, which made their work more difficult. She could not see Jordell or Jem. They must have been taken away already. A hopeful thought struck her. Mayhap they would be taken to the cells next to the secret passage, where Annis and Zane lay hidden. They might still be rescued. But first they had to make good their escape. As they ran forwards, Lauren heard a shout. An arrow hissed as it flew by. She ducked on instinct before glancing down. They had been spotted. Yeren guards and stronghold soldiers stood together, some half-dozen of them, bows out and aiming. Albern fired 3 shots in quick succession, felling 2 and making the rest scatter for cover. Hidden among the wagons that had not yet caught flame, they kept up their barrage. "They are only trying to slow us until their friends arrive," said Albern. "Come." The door behind them flew open, and 2 guards came out into the rain. Ahead, at the other end of the wall, another pair emerged. Lauren and Albern skidded to a halt. He dropped his bow, only 2 arrows remained in the quiver, and drew his blade as the shades charged. Lauren drew her hunting knife and then ducked as a blade swept towards her face. She leaped forwards with a feint, not to draw blood, but to drive the soldier back. Her fist swung hard into the man's nose. It crunched beneath her knuckles, and he seized his face, cursing. But she heard another moving up behind her, and had to turn before she could strike again. Her new foe swung overhead, which let her sidestep easily, but her back was now against the ramparts. She leaped and rolled across the stones, a sidelong swipe passing so close she felt the wind of it. She found her feet and held the knife out again, but then a stray arrow from the courtyard struck the soldier in her face. Her eyes went dead in an instant. The arrow's impact pitched her body over the wall onto the rocks far below. Lauren watched in horror. The woman's limbs flopped about like a doll's, and when she struck the ground she bounced, then pitched out over the cliff to plunge into the darkness of the valley. A hand seized Lauren's elbow, snapping her back to the moment. Albern pulled her onwards, stepping over the bodies of the other 3 guards, all slain. They ran on, Lauren feeling more and more nauseated with each passing moment. Then a figure appeared in the outer doorway leading to the great hall, all the way across the courtyard. Even from the corner of her eye, the massive form caught her attention, and she turned to look. Her heart quailed. It was Triskin. The stronghold commander stood illuminated in torchlight, shorn of his armor but still wearing his thick leather vest. He looked at the 2 of them through the rain, his face an impassive mask. No fury marked his expression, nor any confusion, only a heightened interest and a dark intent, like a wolf with its eyes on a wounded elk. He stepped into the courtyard, walking around the edge of the caravan towards them, his gaze never leaving Lauren's face. "Albern!" she cried in warning. Albern turned and saw Triskin, and his look grew dark. He had recovered his bow, and now he drew. The shaft sped true, planting itself in the commander's heart. The brute fell back with a grunt, then sank to one knee. A second shaft sped forward, striking him in his neck. It almost toppled him backwards, but he put out a hand to steady himself, and Albern's quiver was empty. Slowly, Triskin found his feet again. First, he seized the arrow in his neck, tugging it out as though pulling a knife through a hunk of roast meat. He took the arrow in his chest, and to Lauren's horror, pushed it deeper until the head erupted out his back. Then he snapped the shaft in 2 and threw the fletching away before reaching back with his other hand and pulling out the arrowhead. With blood pouring down his chest, he continued his advance. "What manner of creature is he?" cried Lauren, voice thick with fear. "The kind you cannot fight," said Albern, and they ran on. They made the northwest tower only a few moments before Triskin reached the bottom of it. Before they could run to the next part of the wall, a door crashed open below them. There came the sound of iron-shod boots slamming into stone. "Come, children." Triskin's voice floated up the stairs towards them. His voice echoed loud as thunder off the stone walls, like the clamor from some dark creature of myth. "We have 2 of you already, but I want the rest. Come to me and end your useless flight." Albern made to pull her on, but Lauren stopped him. She had spotted a rope in the corner, and it gave her an idea. After picking it up, she ran on beside Albern, but up the stairs, and not back out to the wall. "What are you?" Albern hissed, but then understanding flashed in his eyes, and he came without question. He followed her up until they found a hatch and burst out onto the top of the tower. Lauren's fingers already struggled to tie the rope in a knot, but her mangled palms made every motion difficult. "Here, let me," said Albern, taking the rope and finishing the knot. He threw it around the battlements and let the end trail off into the darkness below. Lauren waved her hand. "You first," she said. "My hands are still injured, and it will make me slow." "All the more reason I should go behind, to protect you in case we are discovered." Lauren tried to argue, but he very nearly threw her from the top of the tower. "I will brook no argument. Go, now." Though she thought his stubbornness might get them both killed, she had little choice. Lauren seized the rope and swung out into emptiness, lowering herself an arm's length at a time as quickly as she could, boots planted on the wall. The torn skin on her hands, only recently healed, pulled itself open again almost immediately. Lauren gritted her teeth and tried not to scream. The rain and blood mingled to make her grip slippery, and she barely made it to the bottom without falling. Once her feet struck the mountain, she kept her hands on the line and tried to steady it, for Albern was coming much faster than she had. He let himself fall the last few paces and landed already running. Together they fled along the north wall to where Lauren knew the secret entrance lay. Her bloody fingers scrabbled along the lines between stone and mortar. At first she could not find the catch, and in a panic she thought she had forgotten where it was. But then her fingers vanished into the wall, and she pulled at the latch. The door swung open, and together they rushed inside. Annis stood as the door opened, her face a mask of fear. When she recognized the two of them, she relaxed, but only for a moment. Lauren began to swing the door shut, and Annis saw that Jordell and Jem were missing. The door closed with a soft click, and Annis leaped forwards with a cry. "Where are the others?" she said. "What happened to Jem? What?" Lauren snatched her and pressed a bloody hand over the girl's mouth, drawing her down to the floor. Albern picked up a waterskin and doused the torch on the wall. Pitch blackness enveloped them. Lauren whispered in Annis's ear, "Gone. I lost them. They were taken. They are gone." The thrill of their flight seeped from her veins, and she felt tears spilling down her cheeks, mingling with the rainwater and some stray drops of blood. "They are gone. I lost them." Then she could say nothing more, as her chest heaved in racking sobs that she tried desperately to silence. They heard footsteps running by outside and the shouts of soldiers. The dim glow of torches shone in the tiny crack between the door and the ground, and then vanished, and then reappeared. But Lauren hardly cared. She did not even notice when at last the footsteps and the shouts receded, the thin line of light disappearing from the bottom of the passageway. "Gone," she sobbed as Annis took her in an embrace. She pressed her face deep into the girl's shoulder, letting her tears spill forth anew. Albern managed to light the torch again, and she could see the pain in his eyes as he looked at her. Across the passageway, Zane looked at his feet, his head bowed in grief. "God, I lost them. Forgive me." This has been a production of Legacy Books, written and narrated by Garrett Robinson. The music in this podcast was created by Will Musser. Check out his incredible work at willmusser.com. That's WILLMUSSER.com. Today's letter is E. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.